Womanjika everyone, Womanjika meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne and I'm an elder of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present, future and any elders that were here today, and I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of three families, the Nevins, the Terricks and the Wandins, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The three families all descend from one woman called Annie Bharat, which makes us one big family. Annie Bharat is the youngest sister of William Barrett, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Watharong and Dja Dja Wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover, Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Mooloolik Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragadah, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, is our creator, and Wa, the crow, is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community, help people learn new things, and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
Woman Jika, everyone. Woman Jika meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne, and I'm an out of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people. And in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders, past, present, future, and any elders that were here today. And I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of 3 families, the Nevins, the Terricks, and the Wandins, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The 3 families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Wathaurong and Dja Dja Wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover. Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Mooloolah Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, They would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragadah, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community, help people learn new things, and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
Welcome everyone to the Council meeting on the 29th of April 2025, which I now declare open at 6:36 p.m. I'd like to warmly welcome members of the public who have joined us tonight, as well as those watching online. As well as being live streamed, the video recording of this meeting will also be available on our Council website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that your presence may be recorded. I also ask that mobile phones be switched to silent mode during the meeting. A reminder as well to the public in the gallery that, as per Governance Rule 75.1, personal video and audio recordings are not allowed. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respect to their spirits, ancestors, community members and elders past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We now move to item 2 on the agenda, apologies and leave of absence. I note that Councillor Paula Theocharides is an apology for tonight's meeting. Councillors, I have also received a request for a leave of absence from Councillor Sypek. Can I please have a mover and a seconder that Council grant Councillor Sypek a leave of absence for the period the 29th of April 2025 to the 30th of May 2025 inclusive. Moved Councillor Samantha Byrne, seconded Councillor Phil Byrne. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. We now move to item 3 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the Council meeting held on Tuesday the 25th of March 2025 be confirmed? Moved Councillor Cosgrove, seconded Councillor Jones. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Jones? No. Would any other councillor like to speak? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next item on the agenda is declarations of conflict of interest. Does any councillor wish to flag a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to flag a conflict of interest for item 9.3, a material conflict of interest, as the item is about my conflict of interest with respect to the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I would also like to flag a general conflict of interest on item 9.7, disposal of 344 Ascot Vale Road mini ponds. Do we have any other councillors who would like to flag a conflict of interest? No. The next item on the agenda is presentations. Councillors, do we have any presentations tonight? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to acknowledge the wonderful event that Airport West Football Club held on Anzac Day. It was an annual EDFL football event in partnership with the Aberfoldy Football Club. Many people turned up to commemorate the occasion, including yourself, Mayor, and I think that it is something that shows the importance of the day and ensuring that people continue to acknowledge Anzac Day and commemorate and respect those fallen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Are there any other councillor presentations? Councillor Isa?
On behalf of Councillor Phil Byrne and myself, just acknowledge the Flemington Kensington RSL and thank them for their beautiful Anzac Day dawn service. There was a wonderful turnout from the Flemken community. Gets bigger each year, and the RSL put on a hearty breakfast. Councillor Phil Byrne and myself enjoyed some tea and rum at 7 a.m. And thank them for the work they do with veterans in supporting veterans and their families.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Any other presentations? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Mayor. Equally, as Councillor Iser has mentioned, the Flemken RSL, I'd like to acknowledge the East Keilor RSL and their wonderful dawn service that a number of us attended, myself, Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Cosgriff, Councillor Sypek and yourself, and congratulate them on a wonderful event.
Thank you so much, Councillor Jones. Any other presentations? No. The next item on the agenda is petitions and joint letters. I believe we have one joint letter and 2 petitions on the agenda this evening. The first joint letter is regarding Niddrie in brackets Keilor Road and North Essendon Activity Centre. Who would like to table it? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Mayor, I will. I'm
That's okay, take your time.
just getting it. Thank you, Mayor. Would you like me to read it?
Sure, yep.
Councillors received several joint letters with 131 signatures from concerned residents of Market Street, Gilbert Street, Queen Street and Collins Street, Essendon, Renown Street and Duffy Street, Essendon North, Glenbervie Road, Henschel Road, Lloyd Street, Roland Avenue, Cranwell Avenue, Strathmore, as well as Grandview Road, Keilor Road, Jackson Street and Shaw Street, Niddrie. I also want to note that there are more signatures that have been included from other streets and neighbourhoods across the city, which will be added to the final total. The joint letters are urging council for stronger motions to protect their homes from the state government's draft activity centre plan for Niddrie and North Essendon, which proposes high-rise apartments near their backyards. They express fears over privacy, security and sunlight loss, emphasising the importance of preserving the character of their family-orientated neighbourhood. The residents are requesting council take urgent action before the draft is finalised by voting on a motion that Point 1 rejects high-rise apartment developments near family homes. Point 2 opposes automatic permits for these developments. Point 3 maintains existing parking requirements. Point 4 reaffirms current zoning protections and objection rights. Point 5 supports low-impact housing solutions in their streets. And Point 6 suggests that high-density housing should only be placed near Essendon Station away from residential areas. The residents believe these measures will protect their quality of life while still allowing for sustainable housing development.
Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne. In accordance with Governance Rule 62.4, I refer the joint letter to the CEO for consideration. The first petition on the agenda this evening is regarding creating an off-lead dog area on the northern oval of Buckley Park. Who would like to table it? Councillor John Barnes.
Thank you, Mayor. Council received a petition signed by 51 residents of Moonee Valley requesting Council allow the northern oval of Buckley Park to become a multi-use oval for the purpose of a dog's off-lead area when organised sports games and training are not underway. The petition highlights the local ward residents and their dogs have been negatively affected by ongoing delays in finding an off-lead dog area, which was part of the Buckley Street Master Plan endorsed in 2017. The attachments are separately circulated. But,
Thank you,
that's it.
Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Mayor.
In accordance with Governance Rule 62.4, I refer the petition to the CEO for consideration. The next petition on the agenda this evening is regarding a request for parking restrictions and permits. Who would like to table this one? Thank you, Councillor Cosgriff. Please present the petition.
Thank you, Mayor. Council received a petition signed by 40 residents from Robinson Street and Blair Street, Moonee Ponds. The petition requests that Council introduce effective parking restrictions along Blair Street and Robinson Street, north of St Monica's Primary School. It recognises that current restrictions implemented by Council recognises those. However, it notes that these are not suitable to rectify the parking issues. The petition suggests a 2-hour parking restriction should be implemented from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and residents issued with permits upon application to ensure fair and adequate access to residential homes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgriff. In accordance with Governance Rule 62.4, I refer the petition to the CEO for consideration. I believe Council has received 2 further petitions, One is regarding Essendon Senior Italian Citizens Club's request for assistance, and the other is for Senior Multicultural Skills Exchange Group for Women's request for assistance. However, neither is compliant with the governance rules as they do not include signatories' addresses or email addresses. Before I go any further, does any councillor have a conflict of interest to declare on any of these matters? No? Can I please have a mover and a seconder that Council resolves to temporarily suspend the petition and joint letter provisions at Governance Rule 62.3 to allow the petitions Essendon Senior Italian Citizens Club's request for assistance and Senior Multicultural Skills Exchange Group for Women's request for assistance to be tabled? Moved Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak? Councillor Cosgrove? Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Councillors, who would like to table the petition Essendon Senior Italian Citizens Club's request for assistance? Councillor Cosgrove?
Thank you, Mayor.
Please present the petition.
Council received a petition signed by 119 members of Il Secolo Pensionati Italiani di Munipons, apologies for any mispronunciation, also known as the Essendon Senior Italian Citizens Club. Their petition outlines 3 requests, and the addition of a male toilet, as there is currently only one available, a new cooktop, as the existing one is no longer functional, and third, either a reduction in rent or an increase in the council grant to help maintain low membership fees for the pensioners. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. In accordance with Governance Rule 62.4, I refer the petition to the CEO for consideration. Councillors, who would like to table the petition Senior Multicultural Skills Exchange Group for Women's request for assistance? Councillor Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mayor. Council received another petition containing 31 signatures from members and supporters of the Senior Multicultural Skills Exchange Group for Women. As a community-based women's seniors club that has served Moonee Valley for over 40 years, and with the rising costs to provide services, the petition requests either increasing the council grant or waiving the rental fee to continue offering affordable exercise, social and wellness activities to pensioners on fixed incomes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. In accordance with Governance Rule 62.4, I refer the petition to the CEO for consideration. Councillors, do we have any other petitions or joint letters? So members of the public, please be advised that further petitions or joint letters that are substantially similar to the ones tabled this evening and at previous council meetings will not be tabled again at future council meetings. Under Governance Rule 62.4, the joint letters have been referred to the CEO for consideration. We've now come to public question time, and we have received 25 questions from 16 residents this evening. The pre-submitted questions are printed on the lectern for you to read for those in the gallery. Please only read your pre-submitted and approved questions and refrain from asking additional questions or making comments. A reminder that under the governance rules, no discussion can be had on any questions. If the submitter is not in attendance, as per Governance Rule 61.5, I, the Chair, will read out the question on their behalf. The first question is from Donna Clarkson, who I believe is not joining us this evening. So on behalf of Donna, what specific research is being done to survey our streets and ratepayers to educate councillors and council staff on the impacts of the residential overdevelopment that is already eroding our quality of life in Moonee Valley? Thank you, Donna. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sway, to respond.
Thank you, Donna. Through the Mayor, Council is currently preparing a housing strategy for Moonee Valley. Council officers have conducted research on housing development across our city to understand where the most housing growth has occurred and to identify where future growth can be directed to ensure it's located appropriately. Council officers also have convened a community advisory panel in May 2024 and undertaken broader engagement in February and March of this year. This process has allowed councillors and council officers to gain insights into the community's views on housing and development to complement the empirical evidence available. There will be further community consultation after Council has information from the Victorian Government on a new housing capacity assessment platform, which must be used to develop Council's housing strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The next two questions are from Sue Aitken, who I believe is joining us this evening. Sue, are you in attendance? Hi, Sue. You can stand up to the lectern. The questions will be there. Please read your pre-submitted question.
Will Council conduct a public forum to address what impact the proposed government activity centres will have on their residents?
Thank you, Sue. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sway, to respond.
Thank you, Sue the Mayor. The planning controls for the Niddrie and North Eastern Activity Centre areas are no longer proposed. They have been officially implemented by the Victorian Government through Amendment GZ 252 as published in the Victorian Government Gazette on Friday, 11th of April 2025. Therefore, Council will not conduct a public forum regarding the activity centres. However, it should be noted that Council has been actively engaging the community about housing through our engagement on the upcoming housing strategy. Earlier this year, we gathered input from hundreds of local residents through survey to understand their views on housing. Further meaningful community engagement will take place as Council develops this strategy, which aims to direct housing growth to the most suitable locations in Moolee Valley. The housing strategy will be designed to reflect our community's perspectives while addressing the Victorian Government's planning reforms. I look forward to your participation in our housing strategy engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Sue, please read your second pre-submitted question.
With the proposal for more people to reside in Niddrie, where will the land come from to accommodate more schools, kindergartens, doctors' surgeries, parks and public transport?
Thank you, Sue. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sway, to respond.
Thank you, Sue the Mayor. The Victorian Government is considering modifications to the state's developer contribution system to fund infrastructure such as parks, walking and cycling paths, and transport facilities. Authorities can acquire land for various purposes, such as the Victorian Government for schools and kindergartens or councils for parks, as per our open space strategy. Public transport generally operates on government roads, where necessary adjustments are made to manage space or different transport modes. Private businesses, like medical clinics, emerge from market demand. Through strategic planning, councils can ensure an optimal mix of commercial zones near residential areas or in mixed-use zones, aiding the development of services close to residents. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
The next two questions are from Jeanette and Gerardus Backer, who are not joining us this evening. So on their behalf, where is all the infrastructure, waste, sewerage, recreational areas, schools, etc., going to come from to cater for the influx of new residents proposed under your housing policy changes? Thank you, Jeanette and Gerardus. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sway, to respond.
Thank you, Jeanette and Gerardus. Through the Mayor, Council aims to manage the impact of growth in a balanced manner for those who live, work and play in Moolee Valley. It is preparing a housing strategy to guide growth to suitable locations within the municipality. Water and sewer infrastructure already exists in Moonee Valley, and this existing infrastructure supports some of the Victorian government's rationale for increasing housing in inner city areas rather than on the outskirts of Melbourne. The various authorities responsible for this infrastructure manage necessary capacity upgrades over time. As previously mentioned, authorities can acquire land for new infrastructure such as schools and recreational areas, and the Victorian government is considering changes to the state's developer contribution system to provide funding for infrastructure. Council will seek to be involved in this process to advocate that our future local infrastructure needs for our community be adequately funded. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Their next question reads, how will the availability of public transport in Niddrie cope with many more people seeking / having to use it when it is evident that cars will not be the answer? Thank you, Jeanette and Gerardus. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sway, to respond.
Thank you, Susan Mayor. The Victorian Government manages public transport. Council will continue to advocate with the government to ensure that public transport servicing the activity centres has sufficient capacity and frequency and improved accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The next two questions are from Janet Kenny, who is not joining us this evening. So on Janet's behalf, how can our privacy be protected with 4-storey housing overlooking our property? Thank you, Janet. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sway, to respond.
Thank you, Janet. Susan Mayor. The state government introduced the new permit and assessment process, not the council, and it includes privacy requirements. Council must assess proposals against the Moonee Valley planning scheme. Developers will still need a permit, and appeal rights remain if a proposal does not meet the specific standards designed to manage growth impacts, including privacy. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And Janet's next question reads, what plans do the council have to deal with overparking in our street? Thank you, Janet. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sway, to respond.
Thank you, Janet. Susan Mayor. Council manages on-street parking through its municipal parking management strategy, addressing issues via complaints and routine inspections by enforcement teams. All future planning permit applications must include parking proposals, which are reviewed to ensure compliance with requirements and to minimize impacts on the surrounding area. Council will continue to monitor on-street parking demand and implement targeted solutions as needed to balance community needs. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The following questions, 8 to 19, from Tony Triglia, Sky Dawson, Ben Rowland, Stephanie Sebasnik, Matthew Curick, Patrice Williams, Susan Blood and Stephanie Derujo have been disallowed under a Governance Rule 61.8.3 as the content of the questions in relation to the activity centres was answered at the council meeting held on Tuesday the 25th of March 2025 and Tuesday the 10th of December 2024. Please refer to those minutes on our website. The following two questions are from Peter Robinson, who is not joining us this evening. So on Peter's behalf, a comparison of tennis courts in Moonee Valley City Council can reveal neglected open council courts and pristine locked up private clubs. How much council funding has been provided to private clubs in recent years? And how much council funding has been provided to public tennis courts in recent years? Thank you, Peter. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sway, to respond.
Thank you, Peter. Susan Mayor. In the past 5 years, 2 of Council's 4 public tennis court sites have undergone renewal works: Montgomery Park Public Tennis Courts and Debney Park Tennis Courts, with the following costs. Montgomery Park courts, $45,000 for court resurfacing and new net posts. Deputy Park, $129,300 for court resurfacing, new fencing, addition of spoon drain, and new net posts. Over the same period, Council has contributed the following amount to list clubs on Council-owned land. Daragala Tennis Club, court resurfacing, $58,000. Avondale Heights Tennis Club, court resurfacing and lighting upgrade, $520,000 spent to date. Estimate additional $150,000 on further lighting works. Eastern Tennis Club, court resurfacing and lighting upgrade, $600,000 budget allocation, works currently underway. Airport West Tennis Club, design for pavilion upgrade, $350,000 budget allocation, currently underway. Council does not invest in private tennis clubs on private land. Residents who are not members of a tennis club can participate in member-based clubs through the Book a Court system when times are available. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Members of the gallery, please remain silent and do not interject while the meeting is in progress. Thank you. Peter's second question has been disallowed under Governance Rule 61.8.2 as it is deemed as defamatory, indecent, abusive, offensive, irrelevant, trivial or objectionable in language or substance. The remaining questions, 22 to 25, from Anthony Fazzari and Gaston Beltrame have also been disallowed. This is in accordance with Governance Rule 61.8.3 as the content of the questions relating to flood zone planes was answered at the council meeting held on Tuesday the 25th of March 2025. Please see the minutes on our website, and I believe Governance will also provide a response. Thank you, everyone. The next item on the agenda is reports from delegates. Councillors, do we have any reports as delegates? If not, we now move on to item 9, reports. And the first report is item 9.1, Commonwealth Home Support Program Grant Agreement 2025 to 2027. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Happy to move the officer's recommendation, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Seconded by Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I think this one's actually quite exciting. In short, it's that Council accepts a new CHISP grant agreement through to the 30th of June 2027 and note the continued delivery of the HAC PYP while delivering CHISP. Council is also noting the transition of existing home care package clients to the new supported home program on the 1st of July 2025. By endorsing this recommendation, it will support Council's continued delivery of home and community care services that support older people and people with a disability to remain living in their home and in the community and, more importantly, maintain their wellbeing, independence and dignity. This is something that councillors across this table have been quite passionate about for quite a period of time. So I think that this is a very good motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Only to perhaps add as some background that last year a new Aged Care Act was released, and there are, along with reforms to the aged care system, which will affect how we offer those services at council. So officers have been doing quite a bit of work with us as councillors in getting ready for those reforms that need to be rolled out and decided on by June 2027. So there's a lot of work going on in the background at Moonee Valley Council regarding aged care at the moment, and this grant agreement will take us through to that time to make sure that we don't have any disruption to the services we currently provide. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? No, if not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.2, Outcomes Report, Fenced Dog Park Trial at Ben Street Reserve. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Cosgrove.
Thanks, Mayor. I would actually like to move an alternative motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Can you please read that motion?
That Council resolves to A. Note the temporary dog park trial at Bent Street Reserve, Moonee Ponds, will conclude on the 31st of May 2025. B. Note the identified risk in the report that committing open space funds to improvement of an existing park for a specific group of park users may not be supported by the wider community, and that Moonee Ponds and surrounds have very limited open space, and investment in acquiring and developing new open space might have wider community benefits. C. Note the inclusion of funds for the implementation of a permanent dog park at Bent Street Reserve, Moonee Ponds in the draft budget 2025-26, and note that this is subject to community consultation and further consideration as part of the final council budget preparation process. D. Note the community consultation report, Bent Street Moonee Ponds Dog Park Trial, February 2025, attachment 1. E. Note the report, Dog Parks, Possible Sites in Moonee Ponds Activity Centre, December 2024, attachment 2, and request the Chief Executive Officer to provide further information by 31 August 2025 of the feasibility of Site 7, Holmes Road, Milfay Avenue, and Site 11, Rail Reserve, Moore Street, or any other sites in central MPAC that officers see as appropriate, including estimated cost, identified challenges, and confirmation of the ownership of the assets.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Philburn. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. This item brought two new reports to Council. One was the report on the outcomes of the trial for the dog park at Bent Street that's been going on since November. So I'll start with that. The findings or the outcomes of that trial were overwhelmingly positive from the feedback received from the community. Across the 2.5 months that the dog park was there and we were taking feedback, there were 115 respondents. 78% of those strongly support making the park a permanent fixture. This dog park trial on Bent Street is the culmination of quite a lot of work on behalf of officers and requests from councillors. I think it started in 2022, and there have been a number of motions that have come to council meetings. That was in the previous council term, and I can't speak on behalf of the councillors who moved those motions, but my understanding, and from reading those documents, is the intention of a dog park in Moonee Ponds was about addressing the high-rise buildings we have in the centre of Moonee Ponds, and all of the dogs that live in those apartments, all of our apartment-dwelling dogs. Not exclusively, but that was the need that I think that this exercise was really trying to address. So while I am glad to hear that the trial went really well at Bent Street, I do think that there's still a need in Moonee Ponds, in the centre of Moonee Ponds, for somewhere for people to take their dogs, to get exercise and to socialise, and that Bent Street isn't the answer to that. I also guess I want to highlight in the report, Moonee Ponds is one of the most populated suburbs we have in Moonee Valley. It has one of the least amounts of open space per person, and that's projected to keep decreasing. I think by 2040, we're predicting that we'll have 6 square metres of open space per person in Moonee Ponds, compared to an average in Moonee Valley of 31 square metres per person. So the Bent Street site, it's more than a kilometre east of that central MPAC area and those high-rise towers. You have to walk past Queen's Park to get to the dog park, which is why I've added the second, point E, because I'm glad that trial went really well, but I feel as though we've still got a problem in Moonee Ponds that we need to address. Which takes me to the second report that was presented to us as part of this item, which was about possible alternative sites within MPAC. And there were 12 new sites presented to us that were quite novel, and I commend officers for thinking outside the square and for really working hard to come back to us with what we were sort of seeking. And so I wanted to add that we do continue to investigate at least 2 of those sites that looked promising based on the officers' assessments, and any other site that the officers might come across in those investigations that they think would also be suitable. I guess as the report highlights, finding open space and places for dogs within MPAC is a really complex endeavour, but it's not going to get any easier and the problem's not going to go away, hence my additions to the officer's recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Phil Byrne, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of points. I think what sort of struck me with this this particular proposal is that dog parks are essentially like free beer. You go and ask people if they want some, and then, more often they'll say yes. Not everyone, of course, but no particular issues with the officers' report at all with regards to the consultation that was undertaken and the results that they got back for a dog park in Bent Street. But I support the Deputy Mayor's amendment as it just seeks to dig a little bit deeper into some of the other options that were mentioned in that earlier report. Looks into a bit of a blind spot around something which I've always felt is that whether I'm always a little bit unsure as to whether the people in I'll guess to call it the central Moonee Ponds area, certainly where the high rise and the high density apartments are expecting that the Bent Street Dog Park would be the one that has sort of been planted in their mind from way back when, and sort of noting the Deputy Mayor's comments on the distance and so forth. So, I mean, we may very well end up back here looking at Bent Street. I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't want to discount so soon some of the other options that were put forward in that earlier piece of work by officers. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Cosgrove, for your motion. I'm happy to support this motion. I think, obviously, the feedback about the Bent Street trial park has been overwhelmingly positive. It's shown that there is community interest in fenced dog parks, and as has been mentioned, there is a lack of open space in Moonee Valley and a lack of space where you can let your dogs run free safely, both for the safety of the dogs and also the safety of the community. I wanted to pay particular attention to point B of Councillor Cosgriff's motion, and specifically the spending of funds, including open space funds. I am always worried with dog parks, not just about, as Councillor Byrne said, the free beer aspect of them, where people are, of course, going to say yes. I'm also always mindful of scope creep when it comes to dog parks. As the report suggested, there was a wish list of things like shade sails, agility equipment, and other sensory features. These aren't necessarily bad things, but I'm mindful of where this ends and whether we should be spending open space funds on things like this, which do only impact a small portion of the community in an area where we have one of the lowest rates of open space per person in the municipality. And, there are a lot of dogs living in those apartments, but not all owners of those apartments are dog owners as well. So I think we need to be mindful of that when we're spending some of that money. And, so look, like I said, I'm supportive of the motion in generally. I think we should be looking at options for dog parks, but I'm happy to look at other locations and also be mindful of what some of that scope might be when we do fund it in the final budget after further community consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Isa?
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Cosgriff, for your excellent summary of the past. This is an issue that we've talked about in the chamber for 3 years or so, and I think you explained really clearly the difficulties in fulfilling the objective that we had, which is to find a space for apartment dwelling dogs in MPAC, and that challenge is ongoing. I have a couple of other concerns, I guess, about the Bent Street Reserve solution, in addition to the points that I think you raised. One of them is that, and some of these concerns were raised in the community feedback report. One is that it's a fairly small patch of land, and that the dog park, a fenced dog park, would then assume quite a large proportion of it and not leave much space for any potential play equipment or kicking the footy or other people just partaking in other activities. So that was raised from some survey respondents. Also, I do wonder whether we might have skipped a possible solution for the Bent Street, which is that if it was designated an off-leash area rather than a dog park, a fenced dog park, it can maintain the grassed open space, much like Travancore Park or Fairbairn Park, where there can be multi-use. It could even be a timeshare, like the petition earlier tonight around Buckley Park was looking at, so that dogs can have it for some time and then people can kick their footies at other times. So I just wonder whether that particular option has maybe been bypassed. The other concern I have is that if a fenced dog park was to be located there, it would in fact then not be a grassy place at all. The grass would all be removed and it would be a gravel space. And that concerns me a little, and I think the intention was always...
Councillor Isa.
Thank you. The intention was always to increase the amount of open space in Moonee Ponds for the reasons that Councillor Cosgriff outlined, and to see one small grassy area that we have be turned into gravel, I'm really quite concerned about, and I probably am not in favour of that. So I'm in favour of exploring other options. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Were there any other councillors wishing to speak to this motion? Councillor Byrne? Samantha?
Thanks, Mayor. When I first came on council, one of the first debates I had was Alf Pierce Dog Park, and the beginning of that, I think it would just finish the trial and it was going into sort of permanent implementation. And actually quite a few of the what I've heard around the chamber tonight is actually quite similar to when that particular dog park was undergoing consultation and what the next steps were. And I think the reality is it's really hard to find a space for our little or big furry friends. I quite like the idea of the Ben Street Dog Park, but I don't think that it meets what the initial need was, which was brought up. But then I also take on board that there might be other uses for that space. When we were doing the Cliff Wentworth one, we looked at different areas, and a lot of the feedback was about, well, our kids kicked the footy on that particular patch of grass, was where that street, there was a particular street that had that discussion, and it meant a lot to the people who lived locally, so we chose a different spot. And I don't think there's it's hard. It's really hard to be able to find a place. I looked through all of the different locations, and then even when I look at the locations, I think, oh, I like the idea of them as a dog park, but actually would they be better as just a playground, or would they be better as a kindergarten, which is something that has also been, or the bigger sites, something that has been screamed about in Moonee Ponds for a long time as well. So I'm happy to support this motion, but I just think that we have to be mindful that it is incredibly difficult in Moonee Ponds with massive increase in population, people and dogs, in terms of what we do with our limited space, whether that be for open space, for dog parks, for playgrounds, for kindergartens, whatever it might be. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor John Barnes.
Thanks, Mayor. Just looking at the stats here, 108 people were voted online, 90%. Says here, travelled less than 2 Ks to get there. How much time do you spend at Ben Street? 81% visited with their dog. How satisfied are they with the trial? 79% were, 49% were very satisfied. Do you support Ben Street becoming a permanent dog park? 87%. So out of 108 people, I'd like to see a few more people committed to something that's going to be quite a big decision. And Councillor Kostroff has come up with a great point, and I like Councillor Isers as well. So it's a bit iffy for me. I don't own a dog, so it's a bit hard to try and... have we got off-cat parks as well? I'm a bit... Yeah, it's a bit... we could put some humans in there too, including myself. But, so I'm a bit on the fence on this one, so I'm not quite sure which way I'll lean, Mayor. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like a right of reply?
Sure, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, colleagues, for your comments. I think I largely agree with all of the discussion points, and that it is a really, it's a tricky outcome we're trying to get to, or a tricky thing. As Councillor Samantha Burns pointed out, finding open space is not, in Moonee Ponds is very complex, and that's why this has come to us many times. And I really thank officers for all of the work that they've put into it, and for coming back to us when we asked them to. I guess that I just wanted to highlight that I feel very strongly, just because it's complex doesn't mean that we can't keep pursuing it, whether it's open space for dogs or parks or something. It's an issue that we have to deal with. We can't just go a kilometre perimeter all around and expect people to go there, because that's not the kind of city. We don't want the middle of Moonee Ponds to be a concrete town. So, thanks, colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.3, resolving conflict of interest items prior to the consideration of the draft budget 25-26 for Councillor Rose Iser.
Mayor, I'd like to declare a material conflict of interest in this report, as it's deciding on matters for the budget in which I have a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. We'll wait for you to leave the chamber. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Oh, sorry, Mark wasn't on. Thanks, Mayor. The officer's recommendation is that Council resolves to include the following items in the draft budget, 25-26 of $135,000 for the Clock Tower Centre renewal and improvement, and approve the fees and charges scheduled for the Clock Tower Centre in the draft budget. This item is about resolving the conflict of interest, and we're about to get to the budget at the next item. This is historically, well, probably for the last 3 or 4 years, how Council has worked through these conflict issues, but these particular line items I've got no issue with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak?
Echoing Councillor Byrne's sentiments, I think it's these particular line items shouldn't be particularly controversial in the budget. The Clock Tower Centre is a very important facility in Moonee Valley. It's almost, well, our cultural hub is probably the best way to describe it, and the renewal improvement works are necessary, and I think generally supported. So but having said that, you know, there are cost rises and things are costing more money, so the fees and charges schedule appropriately reflects that as well, and I'm happy to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any other councillor like to speak to the item? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. We'll invite Councillor Isa back to the chamber. Welcome back, Councillor Isa. We are now considering the next report, which is item 9.4, Draft Budget 2025/26 and Draft Revenue and Rating Plan 2025-29. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move an alternate motion, please.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. You can read it out.
That Council resolves to A, endorse in principle the draft budget 2025-26 as per attachment 1, separately circulated, as its budget for the 2025-26 financial year as required by the Local Government Act 2020, with the following amendments. 1, increase borrowings to $7 million to potentially allow for new projects and contingencies associated with drainage works in areas susceptible to flooding as identified by any modelling released, and for other intergenerational projects. 2, reduction of pensioner and concession dog and cat registration and renewal to $0 for 12 months. 3, removal of the proposed new green waste bootload and green waste station wagon fees. 4, no increase in existing fees for the following categories of fees and charges: home support, home maintenance, social support, community meals, community transport, men's shed, footpath trading permits, charity collectors, parklets, animal management, libraries, Bowes Avenue, Gerring Hub, transfer station pensioner fees and charges, community halls, swim-only aquatic concession membership. B, endorse in principle the draft Revenue and Rating Plan 2025-29 as per attachment 2, separately circulated, as required by the Local Government Act 2020. C, request the Chief Executive Officer to provide councillors with further information on the following to inform the development of the council plan and long-term financial planning. 1, prioritisation and planned funding of play space renewals, upgrades and new playgrounds 2025 to 2029, including minor works. 2, prioritisation and planned funding of sports pavilions and associated community halls 2025 to 2029. D, request the Chief Executive Officer provide the following information to inform decision-making on the final budget 2025 to 26. 1, planned projects to be funded through the Feasibility and Planning Fund, including $120,000 for finalising Cliff Allison Park Master Plan. 2, further considerations regarding the Moonee Ponds Dog Park. E, F, G and H as per the officer's recommendation with appropriate renumbering. I request the CEO to prepare a report for councillors as part of Q1 financial report for 2025-26 year, exploring ways in which fees and charges may be reduced in future budgets to provide relief for target populations, including pensioners, that should be low-income earners, renters, and others experiencing cost of living pressures. This report should include options for reducing fees and charges associated with leisure centres and pools, and any options for assisting renters and younger residents. And J, as part of the anticipated vehicle crossing policy review, consider more targeted fee structures that reflect, amongst other things, the long-term environmental and spatial costs of multiple crossings.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. So obviously we're voting tonight on our draft budget, which will then go out for community consultation until submissions on our draft budget are open until 5 p.m. the 25th of May. And we really hope that any resident who feels that the draft budget hasn't captured everything they would like to see us doing makes a submission to us. Last year we had a record number of submissions, and it's just so heartening to see people really engage across the community in the budget process, because this is $240 million of community money, and the more engagement we have from the community, the better we are able to be sure that we're spending it in the way that the community would like us to. So it is our draft, but it is at this point, I think it makes sure that we spend that $240 million on the really important asset renewal and upgrades that we need to do to maintain our buildings, to maintain our drainage, and we've referred to that a number of times in the budget. We know that that's an increasingly troublesome and concern for people. It tries to balance all of our different objectives in terms of our environmental sustainability objectives, our health objectives, our sports, physical health objectives, keeping our streets and our street trees and our maintaining our streetscapes, as well as the dealing with all of the fees and charges, which you would have heard me refer to as I was reading that alternate motion. So I'm just going to start with that aspect. I haven't written a particular speech or timed myself, so if you need to cut me off, Mayor, fully understand there is just obviously always so much to say about the budget. But if I can just turn firstly to what we're trying to do in the fees and charges. Look, obviously people across the community, across the country are under financial pressure. And while we don't have control over supermarket prices or our tools are fairly limited in terms of what we can do, and property rates are a very blunt tool, don't allow for much nuance. What we're trying to do in this budget is identify some of our $35 million worth of fees, which is what we've anticipate we will have collected this year, this financial year in revenue, and identify those where we can provide some relief to people, where there are we can not increase some fees by the sort of the standard 5%, or we can in fact, in the case of dog and cat registration, say, look, for pensioners and for concession card holders, let's just not charge people for a year and offer some relief that way. We've proposed not putting up the free green waste, the bootload and station wagon of green waste. There was a proposal to increase that only to $5 or so, but we've said, look, let's just keep that free. So we're trying to find some little ways of offering some relief. We started this work last year, where at our budget last year, we started to really think about how we could better target some of our fees and charges, not just make it all about cost recovery, but how to offset some costs for low-income earners. We're continuing that work now, and I hope that in asking our officers to support this line of thinking and providing us with some more data for next year, that we can continue this work in perhaps a little bit more of a scientific and evidence-based way, so that we can continue to shape our fees and charges in a really fair way for our community. 43 seconds doesn't give me any time to comment on some of the things I'd like to in the budget, but I will just talk about the climate safe measures. 1.8 million on trees to continue protecting our community with a cool canopy, 1.5 million on carbon emission reduction, 2.75 million transitioning our fleet to electric, and some things in Murnong, dealing with some drainage issues, Ormond Park lights, the second stage, and Sherbourne Street residents. I know you're waiting patiently, no longer in Murnong ward, but certainly something that they've been waiting for a long time. I'll leave it there, although there's so much more to say.
That was very good, right on the buzzer. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to echo Councillor Isaa's kind of request, I suppose, that we're really, the budget will be open for community consultation and submissions from now or tomorrow until 5 p.m. on the 28th of May, Wednesday the 28th of May, and we would really love to hear from anyone who feels that we've missed something, or that, yeah. And to acknowledge that we've, as a councillor group and with officers, especially officers' support, we've been working on this for the last few months, and we've sort of pulled it all together in this amended, or this alternative motion. And we were really looking for, Councillor Rice has already discussed it, but targeted ways that we might be able to provide some cost of living relief. They're small, but we hope that they will be helpful. And then the other kind of change, I suppose, to the motion is really point C and D, asking for some further information on things like playgrounds, master planning. The sort of intention of that is, as a new councillor group, a lot of this budget was already in the works, but we're at the beginning of 4 years, and we want to make sure that the financial decisions we're making are really strategically influenced, and align with all of the work that officers have done and, have pulled together for us in the past. So I thank councillors and officers, and particularly Councillor Isa, for pulling this alternative motion together. And please, if you're listening along at home and would like to make a submission, please do.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I just wanted to open by thanking all the officers and staff involved in the preparation of this budget documentation. I think the questions that they have answered from all councillors over recent months and the information that they have provided to us has been invaluable in getting us to this point. I just wanted to make a few comments on the draft budget documentation, noting that it is being prepared under the overarching guidelines of the MV 2040 strategy, a previously endorsed and somewhat overly ambitious strategic vision that is currently being reviewed by Council. This strategy and a broad definition of services under the Local Government Act means that from a council perspective, in some circumstances, Moonee Valley is providing services that a number of other local municipalities do not provide. I'm not making any comment tonight on the decisions of other municipalities and their services, but I think this is a conversation we need to have with residents going forward as part of this Moonee Valley 2040 review, and what they see see as the essential services of council and what that means for them and what a future council might look like. I do like that the budget is projecting a budget surplus. I think this represents sound fiscal management from council, and I hope that this surplus remains at the end of the consultation process and after submissions. I think that's important going forward. I do not like that the budget is suggesting a 3% increase in rates. I'd like to continue to explore more efficiencies in this area, and I think that this needs to be a part of the MV 2040 discussion. And again, this is discussions with the communities and what they want council to do and how they want council to look going forward, because obviously if we want to continue the same level of services as a council, this requires money, and a lot of that money does come through the rates system. I do like that we are, there seems to be consensus so far in the discussion though from councillors that we are being mindful of the cost of living issues happening across our municipality and looking at ways to support people where we can. I think that this budget does represent a strong capital works investment and is covering some important projects. Some highlights for me include the spending on trees across our municipality. I think a strong investment in trees and increasing our canopy cover is a great investment across the municipality. The renewing local roads and local area traffic management investment of 5.53 million is an important one and one that I support, and also the improved pedestrian and shared path improvements of 3.27 million is something that I'd like to highlight as well. Particular highlights in Airport Ward, an investment in Boeing Reserve to update the youth park and play space. I think that anyone that's seen that skateboard ramp at Boeing Reserve would recognise that it's well past its expiry date, and it's good to see that there's some investment going there. It's great to see that we are planning towards the development of the pavilion there as well. Work on implementing the Nursery Corner Master Plan and streetscape improvements on Keilor Road benefiting residents of Essendon North. As this motion is putting out a draft budget for community consultation, and I encourage all interested parties across Moonee Valley to get involved in that process and put in a submission. Thank you for giving me a little bit of leeway there, Mayor.
I didn't mean to. I was just very engrossed in what you were saying. Thanks, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Thank you, Councillor Philburn.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I think just to the budget in the first place, I guess before I turn to the amendment itself, just also, like my colleagues have said, I just want to acknowledge the great work of officers in pulling the budget together, and also just the patience in taking us all through multiple spreadsheets and presentations late into the evening, and our questions on top of it. So thank you. It does leave us with a budget that, not for the most part, it is a very sound budget. I note that things like borrowings and those sorts of things are well under control and well under the within the limits of the Victorian Auditor General and those sorts of things. And just acknowledging the hard work that Council does in keeping some very important services and infrastructure functioning, but also the way that this budget sets us up for the future as well. Obviously responding to a climate emergency. We're already seeing the impacts of changing rainfall on our streets, as well as also the changing pressures on sporting clubs and the need for pavilion upgrades and so forth. So to the proposed amendment, I support the motion and acknowledge Councillor Isaacs' work in pulling this together, and also acknowledging the work of my colleagues in also acknowledging the stresses and challenges that people have in the community around the cost of living, and note that the proposed changes certainly start to address a lot of those concerns, and I support those wholeheartedly. And also note that there's a lot further work that this amendment requests around further opportunities to go further with some of that cost of living relief, and I support those changes as well. I also support that the amendment also touches on starting to have a conversation around aligning fees and charges with broader policy objectives as well. And I'd just also highlight the measures around the green waste, which provide a cost of living relief, but also strengthen those arguments and encouragement about diverting green waste from landfill and some of those broader environmental objectives. So I obviously support that, as well as the work it proposes around the vehicle crossing policy review with regards to ensuring that fees are set appropriate for that. So yeah, very, very interested to see what comes through the submissions process, and I'd encourage people to put a submission in and also be mindful of the other strategic work out there as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Filburn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. I too would also like to thank the officers for the work that they've done with helping us get to this stage. The ninth budget that I've been a part of, and I don't know whether I've ever felt sort of this much like in control and relaxed and not stressed on draft budget night. It just seems like everyone's somewhat on a similar page, and thanks, Mayor. It sort of feels all right. There's a few changes and it's kind of coming together okay, but I'm mindful that we're only at the draft budget stage. I hope I'm feeling this way in a month or two when we endorse the actual budget. But it's going, these are a lot of work all put together by a lot of people, and I'm really looking forward to see what the community comes back with. Obviously an incredibly important part of our budget process. Also mindful that this is obviously the fourth budget within the council plan. We've got the new council plan coming. So it is, I think someone mentioned before, sort of tying off a few loose ends, which is good. In terms of Steel Creek Ward, there'll be a lot happening, which is really exciting. We see some works in drainage, the netball courts, library shelving renewals. There's more consultation to be done on the new Airport West kindergartens and public toilet facilities. One thing that will also be of interest to a lot of people is the work on the new AJ Davis Pavilion and the AJ Davis Reserve, and the potential works we could be doing with the Essendon Keilor College Nidgiri campus and utilisation of sports field there. So I do encourage everyone to please have a look at the budget and submit into that process, but also keep an eye out on the Your Say page for various parts of consultation which will occur with so many of the projects that are going through this, that will come out of this budget and previous budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor John Barnes.
Leave the best till last, they say, Mayor. Well, we've got a big piece of cake and we'd all like a piece of it. To Councillor Isa, that's a fantastic piece of work you've got there, and I'm all for it. It's the men's shed, the community, the elderly. You've got everything covered there, so I'm happy to support that for the people of the Buckley ward. It's an enhancement of quality of life for the elderly and families and kids and dogs and cats and chickens or whatever you got in your backyard. I'd love to see what everyone else has put forward. Nets behind goals, flying foxes in parks, scoreboards. It's good to see that we've got budgets for pedestrian and shared paths improvements, tennis courts getting fixed, bowling greens, better female facilities, toilets, half basketball courts, off-leash dog parts, and a car and a Porsche and everything else that goes with it. But unfortunately, we're not going to get it all. Hopefully we all get along like we are to this present stage, and we can come to some little bit of niggles and pushes and shoves and get what we all want in our Christmas stocking. But mind you, this is only a draft, and I look forward to receiving and reviewing budget submissions for the community prior to the final budget being approved in June. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Isa, would you like a right of reply?
If I may, Mayor, just to reflect on the comment made around the rates rise by Councillor Jones, just to respond to that. It's always the case that a small percentage rate rise means for an individual rate payer something in the vicinity of sort of $5 to $7 or so. It's a very small, so that the 3% increase translates to about to that for every ratepayer. It's a very blunt sort of tool if you wanted to not do that, and it doesn't actually save everybody much money. What we're trying to do here is be more sophisticated in how we assist people. And I know that there's still some research and work that we're waiting for to help us to do that the best way we can, and to help the people who are struggling most in our community. And so I guess that's the different approach that we're pursuing here, is rather than save everyone a couple of bucks, we're trying to save pensioners or concession card holders or low-income earners or renters or whoever it is who's really feeling it just that little bit
30
more.
seconds left, Councillor.
We're trying to help them so make that a targeted impact. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.5, closure of Hallkeeper Lane, Moonee Ponds to vehicular traffic. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Cosgrove?
I'll move the officer's recommendation, please, ma'am.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion?
I will briefly. So this recommendation is about putting in permanent barriers for Hallkeeper Lane, which is between the Des Noonan car park and Margaret Street, as you sort of head towards Moonee Ponds Station from central Moonee Ponds. That little laneway has been closed off for the last 2 years, pretty much, on a temporary basis, as we were testing it out as a more community-friendly space with some outdoor dining and some public art and better pedestrian access. So this is just this is following in December some community consultation about whether we would pursue this permanently. I think we received 2 objections out of 19 submissions about closing it off permanently. So 17 people responded and were quite happy. The 2 objections regarding traffic, and our officers have looked into that and determined that there haven't been any adverse impacts in the last 2 years from closing off that lane temporarily, so they don't feel that that's enough a reason to not pursue this. So support keeping it closed, and as a place that we can in the future enhance even more with some plantings and more art and other interactive features for the community to enjoy. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. I just briefly, I know that there were only 19 submissions made. 17 of them were in support of the permanent closure. I don't like to speak on behalf of the community, but to be honest, I thought it was already permanently closed. Prior to being on council, I would have had no idea that this was just a trial process. It seems to have been used every time I've been past there, especially over the warmer months, incredibly well and incredibly well received as a closed area. And I think that much of the response is overly support, and there'd be a large cohort around there that are already using it in the space and perhaps thought similarly to me that it was already closed anyway. So would not see any impact negatively if we kept it closed as it already has been. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.6, award of contract for parking management services, negotiation number 100057. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Jones?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few key points on the officer's recommendation and why I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation. I think that it's after a it's been come to after a competitive and transparent procurement process. There were 10 submissions and they were all tested and checked for capability. The recommended provider, Orican, was the highest scoring and according to, as shown in the report, outranked quite comfortably the next highest bidder in terms of the fit-for-purpose solution that we were looking for as a council. I think that it future-proofs and fits into strategic alignments in managing parking across the municipality, which is obviously a scarce resource, including the use of new technology and new processes, which I think can enhance our management of parking as a council, but also provide some improvements for residents as well through things like e-permits and stuff like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I think, yes, I'm also happy to support the officer's recommendation. Parking management, there are some who would say that it's one of the most important things we do, I think, parking management. This contract will replace an existing contract we have that's expiring, but it also significantly enhances the kind of capacity. It's a new, it's not just parking management, it's integrated parking management services, which offers an extended suite of tools to officers, not all of which we will necessarily utilise at this point, but it's good to have them going forward. And I think after being briefed by officers on this report as well, there was a real sense of the new technology that this contractor provides will offer sort of a missing piece of data that we don't have in parking management, which maybe sounds boring or not that important, but it allows officers to do their job much more efficiently and effectively. And given that parking's a public space and public resource, it's important that we manage it fairly. I think this will enable us to do so. So happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor John Barnes.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to take this chance to warn my fellow colleagues here to be careful where they park and make sure you read the signs. Thank you.
Thank you for that public service announcement. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Philburn.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Barnes, for the timely warning. Look, I think, obviously, I appreciate the officers pulling together the report. As Councillor Jones mentioned, they've gone through the process. The tender's been awarded. Look, I'm quite interested in, I guess, more just a comment on the technology component and the data capture component of this contract, and just, I guess, going forward, just ensuring that we can really sort of capture and use that data in a way that can shape our strategic thinking, whether it's the local area traffic management or the moves around schools, or just in dealing with the frustration for people coming home from work and not being able to find a park in their street perhaps, and just how things like the e-permits in particular can really link into some of our broader challenges, whether it's sort of the showgrounds and racecourse parking events area, and really see where we can take this sort of, I guess, a step change type contract with our strategic work. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Philburn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Isa, I saw your hand up before. Did you want to speak? No? Okay. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.7, disposal of 344 Ascot Road, Moonee Ponds. I would like to declare a general conflict of interest on item 9.7, disposal of 344 Ascot Road, Moonee Ponds, as a family member owns a property in close proximity to the subject site. I will now leave the chamber and Deputy Mayor Cosgriff will chair the meeting for this item. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, councillors, the officer's recommendation is on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
I'll move the officer's recommendation, thanks.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Samantha Byrne. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think if you hang around Moonee Valley long enough, you see properties bought and then sold again, it would seem. So this property was, I'm not sure it was actually bought when I was first on council, but certainly in about 2008 or 9, what we were trying to do with this property was to in fact acquire the property next door to create the thoroughfare through to Mount Alexander Road, and the idea was to, because parking was an issue along Mount Alexander Road, and the idea was to create a really safe way for people to get from restaurants in Mount Alexander Road through to the Gladstone Street car park, and so the intention was to buy the two properties and create that lovely streetscape for pedestrians and vehicles. But we couldn't manage to convince the property owner of the property next door that we were worth selling the property to. So, unfortunately, that project wasn't realised, and instead, the alternative small thoroughfare was created. And since then, this property, I think it's been put to several uses over the time since then by council. But it's never been able to serve the purpose for which it was actually purchased. So having exhausted all other options, I think it's appropriate that we now try again to allow someone else to make use of this property, but not council.
Thank you. Councillor Samantha Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. The only other thing that I would add was because when I originally saw that this was coming up for sale, I'm like, oh, we could knock it down and put a dog park in, or a kindergarten, or a playground. But it's got an adjoining wall, so it really does limit us in terms of what we can do. So hopefully someone can buy it and use it better than we currently are. So we'll see how it goes. Thanks.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. I will now invite the Mayor to join us again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgriff. The next report is item 9.8, Review of Council Delegations 2025. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Move the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Philburn. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
So this is making some fairly minor changes to, making some only a few changes to the delegation to the CEO, whether or not you consider them minor or not. I probably consider them relatively minor. They bring the financial limit for entering into or varying a contract up to $1 million. It's currently at $750,000 for the CEO to carry out that under delegation. That's benchmarked, and I'm comfortable with that. Most of our contracts at the moment, our significant contracts, are much more than that, and so I'm comfortable that the larger contracts are still going to come to council. There's some other exemptions and smaller, very appropriate arrangements there around that. This motion is not about the sorts of delegations that often create more contentious debate around the chamber, which are those planning delegations, and so this is not changing anything with respect to our other processes, which is something that I know often concerns community members. So it's a long motion, so I'm glad there are no changes to it, because I don't really want to read that whole motion, and comfortable with where we're delegating to our CEO some decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion? Sorry. Councillor Phil Byrne.
Nothing to add, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? No, if not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next item on the agenda is item 9.9, Audit and Risk Committee minutes of 17th of March 2025 meeting. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Cosgrove.
I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones. Thank you. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I suppose just to say that as the two of the three sitting members on the Audit and Risk Committee, I was at that meeting on the 17th of March, and the minutes are true and correct if you would like to read them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to echo the sentiments of Councillor Cosgrove, as someone that was in that meeting, I can confirm that they are a true and accurate reflection of what occurred at that meeting. And I encourage any interested community members to read through that document should they choose to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.10, Victorian Electoral Commission's Election Report 2024 for Moonee Valley City Council. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Cosgrove.
I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the item?
I will. Thank you, Mayor. In October last year, the council elections occurred, and they are conducted by the Victorian Electoral Commission, VEC, and it's part of the Local Government Act, I believe, that they then present a report to each council on the election. A number of us all of us were part of that election process, and I think the VEC were very professional in running it, and I really I'm always grateful that we've got institutions that allow us to have free and fair elections. A few highlights from the report are that our The participation in Moonee Valley was higher than that of the state average, very slightly, but still higher, at 84.33%. And our formal votes were also higher than the state average and higher than they were at the last election, so that's good as well. And I suppose I just did want to note that it was a postal vote election, occurred by a postal vote, which is a decision made by the local government minister. And there were some notable issues for those of us who were, very involved in it. Lots of ballots didn't arrive and people requested extra ones and they didn't arrive either. And so there was certainly some issues that I think were fed back to the VEC, and I hope that they'll be reflected on and perhaps changed for our next lot of council elections in 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Philburn, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. I know it's a fairly procedural report back to Council, but I also just wanted to echo the Deputy Mayor's comments on the VSC, just acknowledge their work and also the AEC work in how important their role is to a strong democracy, frankly, and folks like that are about to do it all again shortly. So I did want to acknowledge that, and also just flag that, some of the learnings through the postal process as well, and also just to acknowledge, all of the folks who lined up on that last day in particular to cast their vote, and thank them for their patience. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to note that for those who are tuning into our wonderful live stream and might be looking at the agenda online, it doesn't appear that on the Moonee Valley website that the attachment 1 from the officer's recommendation has been uploaded, but it also doesn't say that it's confidential. So I'm not sure whether it will be, but that's something that perhaps can be followed up because it's a good read for people who want to read it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd too like to echo the sentiments of Councillor Philburn and Councillor Cosgrove in thanking the VEC for their hard work in what was an incredibly tough election for them. I don't think they envisaged the queues that they would have outside the office there in Moonee Ponds, given the issues with the delivery of ballot papers, whether it was incomplete packs like my own, where as a candidate I didn't even get a ballot paper in my original pack, so I had to go and vote at the voting centre there, but also the number of people that didn't receive ballots, and or half their household did but others didn't. So I just want to thank them for their hard work, given that they probably had a harder workload than they expected to at the beginning of that election campaign. I'd also like to acknowledge that the report does in fact say that we were all declared elected in our wards, and I think that's an important thing to note, that the report accurately reflects the results of the election. Thank you, Mayor.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak? No. I've just got confirmation from governance that council will add that attachment to the website. Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne, for picking that up. Now I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 10 on the agenda is notices of motion, and we have none listed on the agenda for this evening. So we'll move to item 11, which is urgent business. Councillors, do we have any urgent business? If not, we will move on to item 12, confidential reports. We have 2 confidential reports listed on the agenda this evening. The motion to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66-2 of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider the confidential items 12.1 MV/717/2023 12.1-23 Tilba Street, Aberfeldy, and 12.2 appointment of independent members for the CEO Employment and Remuneration Committee, which are displayed on the screen. Thank you, Governance. Can I please have a mover and seconder? Moved Councillor Samantha Byrne and seconded Councillor Cosgriff. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Cosgriff? No. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. This is where we say good night to those watching the meeting via the live stream and to those in the chamber. The next council meeting will be held on Tuesday, the 27th of May, 2025. Good night.